A middle school graduate skips an important meeting. You're fired. I submitted my request form properly and got the stamp from manager Sarah. But manager Sarah denied any memory of it and said she'd fire me if I skipped the meeting. Hearing this, I couldn't help but argue back. It's all your fault, isn't it? The next moment, manager Sarah turned pale. Wait, you mean in hospital? That's right. It's the hospital where your husband works. My name is Daniel Jones. I've been married for 20 years and live with my wife. I just turned 45 and I'm an assistant manager in a sales department at a company. When I was a student, I didn't go to high school after finishing middle school and spent my days working part-time. When everyone else graduated high school, I felt I needed a steady job and started job hunting, but no company wanted to hire a middle school graduate. In the end, the company I work for now was the only one to offer me a job, even though it said no education required. It was actually aimed at high school graduates. So, for a middle school graduate like me, being able to work as a full-time employee was a blessing. It's been 27 years since I started working at this company. Thankfully, I got promoted, and my wife, child, and I had been living happily. However, an event shook our peaceful life. The trigger was a change in the sales department head. The new head was a 52-year-old woman named Sarah Anderson. Manager Sarah had sharp eyes and black hair, always impeccably dressed in a suit. In a word, she was tough. In reality, her tough personality left everyone struggling to deal with her. 2 months after manager Sarah took over, an important meeting was scheduled. I was originally supposed to attend the meeting, but I had been feeling unwell lately, and my condition worsened the day before, so I decided to take the day off. I couldn't attend the meeting, but I had manager Sarah's approval for my absence and had handed over the materials. Moreover, manager Sarah was supposed to lead the meeting in my place. There shouldn't have been any major issues, but for some reason, manager Sarah angrily called me. A high school dropout skips an important meeting. You're fired. Wait a minute. I properly submitted my leave request, didn't I? Leave request? I never received anything like that. That couldn't be true. I had submitted the request form the day before and got manager Sarah's stamp on it. But manager Sarah denied any memory of it and said she'd fire me if I skipped the meeting. Anyway, you're fired. You don't need to come to the office anymore. Hearing this, I couldn't help but argue back. It's all your fault, isn't it? My fault? Why would you say that? You skipped the meeting on your own. I got sick from your unreasonable demands. For a while, manager Sarah had been forcing me to work overtime. At first, I refused, but she insisted, so I complied. But there was so much overtime that I was working until past midnight every day. I would take a taxi home, get about 3 hours of sleep, and then head back to work again. As a result, I started suffering from dizziness and headaches. I took a leave of absence to rest, but it was all because of manager Sarah. Stop making excuses. Still, she continued to blame me without acknowledging her own fault. But the next moment, manager Sarah turned pale at my words. I'm currently getting treatment at an hospital. You know an hospital, don't you? Hospital, you mean? Yes, it's the hospital where your husband works. I took time off and went to the hospital. I chose the one closest to my house, knowing that manager Sarah's husband worked there. She always bragged about her husband. Are you serious? Going to the hospital where my husband works? Serious or not, it was the closest hospital to my home. You haven't told my husband anything unnecessary, have you? It seemed like manager Sarah knew she was in the wrong. She seemed worried that her misdeeds might be exposed to her husband. What unnecessary things are you talking about? Don't play dumb about me forcing you to work overtime and all that. Oh, I haven't mentioned that yet, but now you've just given it away. At that moment, manager Sarah's shrill voice stopped. What? Given it away? You're outside the hospital now, right? No, I'm inside the hospital. The doctor was just interviewing me. Doctor, you mean? Manager Sarah seemed to understand the situation from my words and fell silent. In fact, I had collapsed in the hospital due to my poor condition and was getting unfor in a private room. Just as the fall was about to finish, Manager Sarah's husband, Richard, came in for an interview, and that's when the call came. My phone was on silent, but I noticed it vibrating. Phones are not allowed in the hospital, but when I explained it was a work call and the source of my stress, they made an exception. Apparently, Richard wanted to identify the extent to which the stress was affecting me. So, I had the call on speaker mode, and Richard was shocked to find out the caller was his wife. Could it be? Is Richard there? Yes, I've been listening to everything you said. Wait, that was different, you know. As a manager, I have to be strict sometimes. Knowing her husband was beside me, Manager Sarah faltered. Strict? Do you think declaring someone fired is part of employee training? Well, that's enough. We'll talk about this at home, Daniel. You can hang up now. Hearing Richard's words, I ended the call. Manager Sarah was still trying to say something over the phone, but it didn't matter. I can't believe my wife was the source of your stress. I'm sorry. No, Richard, you did nothing wrong. Anyway, get some more rest today before going home. I'll prescribe you some medicine. Richard instructed me to stay calm for a few more hours, and I decided to sleep for a while in the hospital room. I hadn't had enough sleep lately, so I quickly fell asleep even in an unfamiliar environment. After napping for about an hour, I woke up to find numerous missed calls on my phone. All the missed calls were from Manager Sarah. Thinking I shouldn't stay too long and become a nuisance, I started to get up from the bed when I heard voices outside the room. Wait, what are you doing here? Go home. Just then, the hospital room door flew open. Why did you tell my husband about the overtime? It was Manager Sarah, who was supposed to be at the office. Her hair was disheveled, her forehead covered in sweat, and her usually neat suit was in disarray. Why are you here, Manager Sarah? Of course, I snuck out of the office. At her words, I glanced at the clock. But right now, there's supposed to be a meeting. That doesn't matter. I need to talk to you now. What do you need to talk about? I'm getting fired, right? Maybe it was because there were people around, or because I had already been told I was fired. But I felt unusually confident. Or perhaps it was because I saw Manager Sarah looking flustered for the first time. With Richard nearby, I felt more comfortable voicing my opinion. Are you doing this to ruin me? Ruin you? I just came to the hospital because I wasn't feeling well. Don't act innocent. Do you know how hard I worked to get married? Manager Sarah said as she stomped towards me. Enough. This has nothing to do with you. This is between the two of us. I'm a doctor and your husband, so it does involve me. Thanks to Richard stopping her, I shudder to think what could have happened if no one else was there. How much more do you want to make me suffer? Suffer? What have I done? I just asked you to work some overtime. Is that really all? You have been harassing me regularly. At those words, Richard frowned. Harassment? What do you mean by that? Please explain. Don't say anything. I didn't do that. Don't believe him. Can you step out of the room for a bit so we can talk? However, Manager Sarah refused to leave the room. Staying here won't solve anything. We can talk another day. Fine, I'll wait outside for 5 minutes. Realizing that resisting further was useless, Manager Sarah finally left the room. Once it was just Richard and me, I recounted everything that had happened. Since Manager Sarah became the sales manager, I had been subjected to various forms of harassment. For example, I was the only one not invited to the sales department's parties, or I was given incorrect meeting times. At first, it was just minor harassment. But it gradually escalated, and recently my computer data was erased and my clients were taken away. The harassment was interfering with my work, and I was mentally exhausted. I can't imagine my wife doing such things, but But it's true, isn't it? Yes, I tried to report it to the higher-ups, but it seems she is well connected. So, it got covered up. I nodded at Richard's words. I once consulted with the HR manager. I felt I couldn't endure it any longer, but my concerns were never addressed. Since then, whenever I tried to visit the HR manager, I was always told he couldn't see me. I later found out that the HR manager and manager Sarah were the same age and close friends. That's why I believe the HR manager covered up my complaints. Honestly, I was considering changing jobs, so this might be a good opportunity. As difficult as it is to say, I think you should fight until the end. Fight? You mean expose manager Sarah's wrongdoings? Richard nodded, looking slightly uncomfortable. He might be right. So far, I've only been oppressed by manager Sarah without any resistance. If I'm going to leave the company, I might as well put up a fight before I go. My wife is in the waiting room, so it might be better if you leave through the back door. Thank you for everything. No, it's my responsibility. My wife caused this, and you are my patient. Thus, thanks to Richard's consideration, I left the hospital without encountering manager Sarah. I kept checking behind me to make sure she wasn't following as I headed home. After getting home, I watched TV absent-mindedly, but realized I had a newfound courage. I must have been encouraged by Richard's words. The next day, I got ready and went to work as usual. There was a commotion in the office. Did something happen? It seems quite hectic. Good morning. Yesterday, manager Sarah suddenly stormed out of the meeting room. Apparently, her abrupt departure from the meeting caused a stir, and she was called in by the higher-ups. Moreover, she was reportedly speaking incoherently. Something about Daniel being at fault, and then about her husband. Richard. Why is she bringing up Richard? She mentioned something like her husband's family lending money to the company bank. It seems that her voice was so loud that employees passing by could hear the conversation. Why was manager Sarah talking about that? I don't know for sure, but Richard and manager Sarah must have had a conversation last night. Something must have happened then. While I was thinking about this, manager Sarah returned to the office with a dejected look on her face. The employees who had been gossiping quickly returned to their desks. I wanted to quietly focus on my work to avoid further trouble, but it seemed that wasn't going to happen. Can I talk to you for a moment? Yes, sure. Just as I was about to start working, manager Sarah instructed me to come to a separate room. She always called me to a separate room when she was going to berate me. So, I expected to be yelled at again today. However, besides manager Sarah, the HR manager was also in the room. Why is the HR manager here? And what is this about? You thought you could bring me down, but too bad for you, I have allies. Allies? You mean the HR manager? At this point, I already knew that manager Sarah and the HR manager were in cahoots. But that was only because they covered up my complaints. Nothing more, nothing less. We have a deep relationship. That's why he listens to everything I say. Yeah, I'll do anything Sarah asks, even fabricate a scandal or something. That sounds good. I've had a rough morning and could use some stress relief. Manager Sarah and the HR manager were having a disturbing conversation. Fabricate a scandal? What do you mean by that? It's an excuse to kick you out of this company. Why would you do that? Did I do something wrong? At my words, manager Sarah's playful demeanor turned serious. Did something wrong? Of course you did. A middle school dropout like you shouldn't be so bold. Yesterday was your own fault, wasn't it? This goes way beyond that. I couldn't understand why manager Sarah was harassing and targeting me with such anger. But then she began to explain her reasons. You saw us meeting in secret, didn't you? A secret meeting? Do you mean a cheating situation? Don't play dumb, of course. That's what it was. From this conversation, it became clear that manager Sarah and the HR manager were having an affair. But I had never witnessed them meeting in secret. Wait a minute. I have no memory of seeing anything like that. Don't lie. It happened a while back when you were working overtime. When I heard the details, it seemed they had a secret meeting in a nearby room while I was working late. Apparently, I walked by that room, and our eyes met. Could it be? Was that the time I wasn't wearing my glasses? What? Glasses? What do you mean? Sometimes, during overtime, I take off my glasses when I go to the restroom to rest my eyes. I usually wear contacts, but during overtime, I switch to glasses because my eyes get tired. However, when I go to the restroom, I take them off to give my eyes a break. Maybe I passed by them during that time without realizing it. So, you had no idea about the affair? Yes, I had no idea until now, so I'm surprised. Oh, by the way, the affair thing was a lie. Don't believe it, okay? Feeling relieved that I didn't know about the affair, Manager Sarah started claiming everything she said was a lie. Either way, I think the higher-ups should decide. What are you trying to say? Given what happened yesterday, I recorded our conversation for my protection. With that, I took my phone out of my pocket. Modern smartphones come with built-in recording functions, making it easy to use. Before entering this room, I turned on the recording feature. I thought it might serve as evidence if anything happened, and it turned out to be more useful than I imagined. What? You recorded this? Delete it now. No. If it's a lie, there's no problem, right? That's not the point. Hand over the phone. The HR manager grabbed my wrist. Stop it. Your actions admit that the affair was real. I don't care. If the evidence is gone, it never happened. That's right. Take his phone away now. I desperately protected my phone to keep the evidence safe. As I struggled against the HR manager's relentless attempts, the door suddenly opened. What are you all doing? Let go of him. Executive Vice President, why are you here? Why, today is the inspection day. I announced it well in advance. Come to think of it, I had forgotten that today was the day the upper management, including the EVP, was visiting the office. He had heard the commotion as he passed by and decided to investigate. Executive VP, there's a lot to this situation. This employee recorded a conversation in the office without permission. That's not good. Why did you do that? They're trying to frame me as the bad guy. Isn't that awful? Before I could speak, Manager Sarah quickly defended herself. She was trying to prevent me from saying anything further. However, it seemed the EVP was not going to be swayed by her tactics. Could you stay silent for a moment? I'm talking to your subordinate. Sorry. Now, why did you make the recording? You know that recording without permission is prohibited, right? In our company, recording in the office is strictly forbidden to prevent information leaks. Of course, I knew that and was prepared to face the consequences. I've been enduring harassment from Manager Sarah for a long time. I thought it could serve as evidence. Harassment, you say? We'll need to hear more about this. No, that's not true. Please listen to me. Manager Sarah pleaded desperately, but the EVP insisted on hearing the details. Then, the EVP took Manager Sarah and the HR manager away. I went back to work, but Manager Sarah didn't return. I wondered how long it had been since I experienced such a peaceful day. I continued my work as usual, and a week passed. During that week, Manager Sarah didn't come to the office at all. As for me, I had a follow-up appointment at the hospital to check how the medication was working. I finished my work early, headed to the hospital after leaving the office, and checked in at reception. Daniel Jones, please come to the examination room. A nurse called my name, and I headed to the examination room with a heavy heart. How have you been feeling? Any changes? Yes, I've been sleeping better than before, and I think my overall condition is improving. That's good to hear. I'll reduce your medication a bit this time. Seeing Richard for the first time in a week, he was as professional as ever. I was hesitant to bring up Manager Sarah, but I felt it was something he needed to know sooner rather than later. So, I decided to start the conversation. Can I talk to you a bit about Manager Sarah? What's going on? Did she do something again? No, not exactly. She did push me around a bit, but that's not it. Seeing my serious expression, Richard straightened up. He might have already sensed something before I started talking. It seems that manager Sarah might be having an affair with someone from our company. I suspected as much. I had a feeling something was off. You knew. I hesitated to tell you myself. As expected, Richard had been suspecting manager Sarah of cheating for a while. He had been concerned since he heard she was always coming home late, claiming to be working overtime, but was actually pushing the work onto me. Additionally, he mentioned that their conversations had decreased recently, and their relationship was on the brink of falling apart. Before we got married, she was kind and faithful. Maybe she was just pretending. I don't know. What do you plan to do now, Richard? Honestly, I don't have the confidence to continue this marriage. The atmosphere became heavy, and I deeply regretted bringing it up. But it was better for him to know about the affair than to remain unaware. After some light small talk, I left the hospital. The next day was my day off, but I received a call from manager Sarah. I didn't want to answer, but I found myself pressing the answer button anyway. Hello, why are you calling me out of the blue? You told my husband about the affair, didn't you? Clear up the misunderstanding right now. Misunderstanding? I only mentioned it as a possibility. Shut up. This is all your fault, so get to the cafe near the office right now. Manager Sarah abruptly hung up, leaving me no chance to refuse. Richard would probably be there as well. I would have preferred to sleep all day, but worried about Richard, I forced myself up and headed to the designated cafe. Sorry for being late. Yeah, this is a big deal, so you should have gotten here faster. I spoke to Richard, but it was manager Sarah who answered. She was sitting with her arms crossed and face flushed with anger. You lied about everything, right? You want to get rid of me so you can become the manager, don't you? Get rid of you? I did think I didn't want to work with you, manager Sarah, but... See, did you hear that? This is why I hate having a middle school graduate as a subordinate. Manager Sarah seemed intent on framing me as someone who lied about her affair to get a promotion. However, Richard, sitting next to her, remained silent, staring at the table. He's mad because you're not saying anything. Don't you get it? Then I should just tell the truth, right? Yes, that's right. You finally understand. You're my subordinate after all. Contrary to her earlier demeanor, manager Sarah was now all smiles, thinking I was going to back her up about the affair being a lie. But instead, I played the recording I had saved. Hey, that's the recording I told you to delete. The one who was telling the truth was you, manager Sarah, wasn't it? That's not right. I wasn't having an affair. Manager Sarah was desperately denying it, but Richard's expression had grown severe, with a furrowed brow. See, at the end, you even said it was a lie, didn't you? Can you stop this already? It's pathetic. What? Richard's expression clearly showed his disdain. You were having an affair, weren't you? I found plenty of other evidence. Evidence? What do you mean? Evidence that I was having an affair? Yes, you even kept a detailed diary. Are you mocking me? Manager Sarah had recorded the days she cheated in her planner, even writing detailed thoughts about each date. She left this planner in the living room, where Richard found it. This is obviously made up. Even couples need some excitement, right? Either way, it'll all come to light upon further investigation. I can't stay with someone who does this. Wait, what do you mean you can't stay with me? Are you talking about a divorce? Richard nodded in response to manager Sarah's question. At that moment, she began to cry dramatically. Why are you saying this? I love you. Isn't it the wealth that you love, not Richard? Manager Sarah, who had been crying, glared at me. That's not true. It might have seemed that way, but I really do. Stop it already. Why are you acting like the victim? I'm sorry. I'll never forget Richard's expression at that moment. It was like a tiger ready to pounce on its prey. At that moment, there was no definite proof of the affair, nor could it be disproved. So, at Richard's suggestion, we decided to part ways for the time being, and I started to head home to rest my tired body. I watched the Sarah couple leave, and manager Sarah looked utterly devastated. She didn't even notice her bag dragging on the ground or her cardigan slipping off her shoulders. It was a picture of absolute despair. Since then, I've been living my life as usual. One thing that has changed is that manager Sarah stopped coming to work. Apparently, after being called in by the higher-ups about the affair, the office's surveillance cameras were thoroughly reviewed. As a result, evidence of the affair between manager Sarah and the HR manager was found. The upper management decided to transfer both manager Sarah and the HR manager. The HR manager was transferred to a rural town in Alaska. And although he accepted his fate, his wife filed for divorce because of the affair. Now, he works alone in a rural town in Alaska, feeling lonely. Rumor has it that the Alaska branch has a window seat department where the HR manager was assigned. With hardly any work and no chance of promotion, most employees quit within 6 months. As for the former manager Sarah, she was transferred to a nearby branch, but eventually resigned, unable to withstand the gossip about the affair. As for the situation with Richard, I heard from him directly that the divorce was finalized. You helped me a lot back then. Knowing about the affair prepared me for what was coming. I'm glad to hear that. Honestly, I was very hesitant about telling you. She had a good education, but this incident showed me that education and character don't always align. I learned for the first time that the former manager Sarah had graduated from a prestigious university. Perhaps that's why she looked down on me, a middle school graduate. After the divorce, the former manager Sarah lost both her family and her job, and now lives alone. She used to splurge on luxury brands, but without money, she could only afford a run-down apartment. She asked me for money, but she's the one who owes me alimony. That's true. By the way, did you sue her over the affair? Yes, I did. Although I won't get as much as I might have with more evidence, I did file for alimony. Hearing this, I felt a bit relieved. I was worried that Richard, being a kind person, might not demand alimony. But it seems Richard was determined to hold her accountable. The last time I saw him at the hospital, he said, "No matter how long it takes, I intend to make her pay the full amount." Since then, I've been working comfortably in the office without the former manager Sarah. Before she came, I never had any problems, and it feels like those peaceful days have returned. I'm still an assistant manager, but now I can focus on my work. Previously, the harassment and verbal abuse from manager Sarah affected my mental and physical health, making it hard to concentrate. But now, I enjoy my work even more, coming up with strategies for new business and planning for additional orders from existing clients. Since the incident with former manager Sarah, I become friends with Richard. A year after the divorce, Richard met someone wonderful. We plan to have dinner with my wife, Richard, and his girlfriend soon. As for why I started working after middle school, my parents passed away early. I didn't want to burden my relatives, so I insisted on working despite their opposition. I really wanted to go to college and had many things I wanted to learn. So, I believe what Richard said about education and character not always aligning is true. Many people feel insecure about their education due to their disadvantaged circumstances. Although the former manager Sarah caused trouble until the end, I'm grateful that she brought people together. I vowed never to forget the pain I experienced and to never become like her.